Fabulous. Well, I'm going to say good morning. Happy Monday to all. And today we're talking about what seems to be a hot topic suddenly. And it is dealing with making your buyer's offer, first of all, stand out, but also dealing with multiple offers on both sides. And it's funny, I just was talking to Teresa, who ran out because it was about her offer that she just got accepted, which was a multiple offer. I was talking to Shandy Ortiz, who may or may not be on the call, last night, trying to get her offer to stand out as a multiple offer. We've had a lot of multiple offers going crazy lately. Have you guys all been noticing that? Have we all been seeing this multiple offer?
Yes.
Right?
Yes.
Craziness.
Yes.
Who's saying yes? I love that.
Laura.
Laura? Oh,
Yes.
she's yes. Excellent. Love it. Okay. So first, I want to go through a couple things. I'm going to share my screen. Let's have a little fun. You guys are like, this is scary. And let's have a little fun talking a little bit about multiple offers, shall we? Because I want us to have a good understanding. Now, let's be real for a second. We can know everything about a multiple offer, but if we're on the buy side, we could not pretend that the agent who's going to be putting in and accepting the multiple offer has the same knowledge, okay? So we're going to have the best understanding and knowledge, but we have to understand that the agent on the other side may not have the same level of knowledge, okay? Can we all agree?
Yes.
Now, we also have to understand that some of the things we're going to go through may or may not be acceptable, but we also don't need to school the listing agent if we're trying to get our buyer's offer accepted. Sad to say, guys, but that's the reality of it also, right? So, but let's go through just for our own knowledge first. Does that sound good? How well do we understand working with multiple offers? Sound good? If a seller puts in a counter offer, how long is that window of acceptance? Does anybody know? 2 days. There's a 2-day window of acceptance unless they write it in separately for a counter offer for a seller. So a seller can put in multiple counter offers. Does anybody know that? Yeah, so yes. Okay, so if you're on the sell side and you've received offers, you can counter multiple, but this is where it gets scary. What if you've received multiple things at the same time? Who do you have to accept? We have seen several legal cases where there are people fighting over to say, it's mine, it's mine, it's mine. So realistically, I don't recommend if you're on the list side that you counter multiple people, because of that very reason, it can get really sticky. Everybody can see where that could go, right? But yes, just so you know, there is a time frame. True or false? Once an offer is submitted to the listing broker must provide a written affirmation to the cooperating broker saying that the offer has been submitted to the seller, or a written notification the seller has waived the obligation to have the offer presented. Is this true or false, guys? Okay, they don't have to. It is not a requirement. However, Code of Ethics states that if you would like a written affirmation from the listing broker that has been presented, you can have it, okay? So it's kind of an interesting thing. So it's not a requirement, but by Code of Ethics, if you request to have it, it won't come from the seller, but it will come from the listing broker to say that it was presented. That is true, but it is false that it is a requirement. It is not always happening by absolute means. Everybody good on that? If the listing realtor is the listing realtor obligated to respond to an inquiry about the seller's response to an offer? What do you guys think about that? Kind of goes back to the last one, doesn't it? What was that? Is a code of ethics. So here's the thing. Here's my point to this one. Was your offer valid at the time that you submitted it? Here's my counter question to you. You better make sure that when you're putting in multiple offers, because if we're back to multiple offer, guys, how many times would they say we're accepting multiple offers? The seller's going to look at all offers on Sunday. Let's say you submitted your offer Thursday. Let's say your offer was good till Saturday. They don't have to even present your offer. It was no longer valid on Sunday when the seller was going to be viewing them. You see what I'm saying? So are they obligated to respond to the inquiry? No, in this instance, because your offer is no longer even a valid offer. Now, if you have a valid offer, again, yes, per code of ethics, they have to respond, right? Back to the last point. But I'm going to be saying to you, if you know that they may be having multiple offers, make sure you know when the seller's going to be looking at them, because you better make sure your offer will be valid. Because if we get to the point where there's going to be many multiple offers, and I hate to say this, guys, but remember, there's something called variable commissions. Does everybody know what a variable commission is? Does anybody not know what a variable commission is? Anybody? Thank you for those in the group.
I don't.
Thank you, Christina. Appreciate Christine admitting.
Mhm.
Okay, a variable commission means, let's say I'm going to a listing and I say, Mr. and Mrs. Seller, I am so excited to be here. And I understand you're trying to net the most amount of money. And thank you for offering if I will drop my commission. Of course not. However, I tell you what I can do is if I have the opportunity to represent the buyer as well, although I'll be working doubly hard, I will be able to offer you, instead of my 6% commission, a 5% commission. We've all seen and done this, correct? That is a variable
Yes.
commission, guys, because it means if I am representing the buyer, that commission has changed, right? So it's variable. Right? It's variable because it's, say, 6% if I am 3% on my side and 3% on the co-broke side of somebody else. But if I represent both sides, it's now 5%. So I have to put in the MLS variable commission. That must be put in. Otherwise, it's a code of ethics violation. And by the way, if you get called onto the board, you could be held liable for, there's a lot of things you get held liable for if you don't notate that. And this is the reason. Let's say I have that variable commission. I did not notate it in the MLS. Linda now puts in a buyer's offer and she calls and says, Carrie, do you have multiple offers? Am I obligated to say if there's multiple offers? Thank you for saying that, Teresa. No. I am not obligated to tell that there are multiple offers unless the seller has instructed me to do, because that may or may not be a good thing for the seller, right? Because what happens is it could give our buyers the opportunity to put in better offers. But what else could happen? It could make the buyers walk. Thank you, Marie. Right? So you have to talk to your seller and explain to them how a multiple offer situation could work. And I have a whole document for you on this, right? That you should give to your buyers and your sellers explaining multiple offers. But the point is, it could go for them in a positive way or a negative way. So the seller has to instruct you on whether or not you need to explain. However, if you have a variable commission and you are representing the buyer, if a realtor asks you, do you have an offer in that you are representing? You have to tell them if you do. That is where you are obligated to share that, because it is now not fair to them if you don't. They need to understand there's an offer in that you're representing that will not be equal. They have to understand if they're putting in an offer at the same exact price as my offer, let's say we're both at asking, my offer's better, guys, because they're paying less commission, aren't they? The net is higher already to the seller.
But if you're doing a variable can't say that, variable
Commission.
but you don't have the buyer, do you have to still?
If it's variable commission, I don't have a buyer offer and I don't have to tell. Right. But if there's a variable offer out, I have notated that a variable commission, I have an offer in that I am representing myself, meaning that the commission will be changed on that deal. I have to notate, I have to let this an agent know, because if I don't, I am putting that agent at a disadvantage, which is really not the agent, right? It's the buyer that they're representing. Does that make sense? That is the code of ethics right there. Yes, Flavia.
In order to have the variable commission, you have to have that where in MLS?
We have to notate that in the MLS. So if you, and I don't have my team going through your listing commission, listing agreement if you say that. So we're not going through that. You have to notate that on the MLS data entry sheet. There is a point that says variable commission and you have to notate it if it is, because
On the listing agreement too that you put in?
no. That would be under additional terms that we put it down.
So
Mhm.
Carrie, what do you recommend? Do you recommend like 5%? Because I have 3 and 3 in my listing. So should I do 5?
No, 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 no. You would do three, let's say you do 3 and 3,
Yeah.
but under additional terms, you would say broker and seller agree if Flavia Bazan, not Premier Sotheby's, Flavia Bazan represents the buyer and the buyer closes, the buy side commission would be dropped to such and such, right? Well, it depends on, you could drop it a point, you could do the buy side to 2%, and that way it comes to 5, right? But the point is that you're still getting the 3% on the list and then a 2% on the buy. You see what I'm saying? That's where you're giving the,
Which is fair.
yeah, that's the break that you're giving them. But you have to be very careful that how you word that, and I'll help you do that. Because if Teresa brings them from Premier Sotheby's, we don't want to give the same thing, right? Teresa's not you. Yeah, exactly. So we have to be very careful how we word that.
What if you don't know the percentage? What if you give like 2,000 back if I get both sides? Then how do you split it?
Well, if you're just giving a credit at closing, you still have to still do it as variable commission because a credit is still variable. If you're saying, if I'm representing both sides, I give you a credit, it's variable.
Just check your.
You still check variable. Mhm.
Gary, I have a question. What
Yes.
about if you have an offers and both agents, buyers and selling and leasing agents agree to reduce their commission, for example, $5,000 to
Mhm.
make the number to the sellers? Where that we need to add it in the
That is
contract?
not variable commission, and that is just per deal, and you would not put that in the contract. You would do a separate, I would recommend everybody does a credit letter. So you would do a credit letter on your side and the buy side would do a credit letter on their side because it's based on that one deal. So we'd never modify like a listing modification because what if that deal doesn't go through? Now we're going to do it on everything, right? So in that specific instance, both agents, I recommend do a credit letter. So that way, because remember, whose commission really is it? It's the brokers until you get paid. So the broker has to write the credit letter saying that they're going to be crediting to the buyer or seller, whoever they're crediting at closing. So each side contributes their own credit letter in that instance. Great question. Any questions on this, guys? Is this helpful? Great. All right, let's continue. Once an offer is made, is there a default obligation of confidentiality as to the terms of the agreement? Do you have to tell people about the agreements that you've been receiving on other offers? So, excellent. No, you don't. You never do. Even if the seller tells you, you can tell them there's multiple offers, you never have to share. However, if the seller says you can let them know we have cash offers, you can tell them that, right? But it's only as far as the seller allows you to share. If the seller says you can say there's multiple offers, but they don't say you can tell they're cash offers, then you don't tell them that, right? Always get that kind of information from the seller because if the seller said just multiple offers, but they didn't say cash offers, again, that could scare away other buyers. You've got to be very careful with the information you give,
And
right?
again, because you're not dealing with very well-trained other agents.
Yes.
sometimes, how do you, I'm not at liberty to say, like, how do you verbalize that?
Well, the seller has instructed me to share. Always lead with that. Well, the seller has instructed me to share. Because people, just like when I tell you to ask somebody, for example, if you have a listing in a community and someone else is pending, you can always ask them what it pended for. And people will freak out. Oh my God, you can't. That's not true. They can share that if the seller has allowed them to. So you always start with, has the seller given you the authority to share at what price you've pended? Yeah, of course. You always lead with that because again, it's not up to the agent. It's never up to the agent. It's up to the seller. Okay, is that good? Any questions on that? You guys good with that? All right. I wish I could do this for all the other agents. I'm working one agent at a time, right? I have my advisors and then we have the agents. Okay. Can you only show your seller offers above a certain amount? Are you allowed to do that? If the seller instructs you to do that, absolutely. So if the seller has instructed you, don't show me anything below 650 and you get offers, you can tell the agent, I'm sorry, my seller has instructed me not to show them any offer below 650. You're going to have to bring it up. right? But you can't on your own say that's too low. I'm sorry, you're going to have to bring that up, right? The seller had to have instructed you what too low means. Okay, how often do we have agents going, oh, that's just way too low? The seller has had to give you an information at some point as to what too low will be. So make sure when you're in the listing a presentation, is there a number that you never want me to present below? Because I'm going to tell you, this happens all the time, and it's the agent acting as the seller, right? It's a huge code of ethics violation. It happens all the time. So, you know, we can't fix it, but that's just the reality of it. Okay, we already talked about this. Can a seller counter some or all of the prospective buyers in a multiple offer situation? What do you guys think?
Can.
It is, they can do all of them, and it can be totally problematic. And let's say the seller did counter multiple people. Do they have to accept? Well, let me not say that, because obviously if they counter back, you've already got the offer, right? That's where you got to be careful. If they have countered, when something comes back, it's executed. That's where counters are scary, guys. If you counter, it comes back executed, right?
Yeah.
So here's the best way to do this. Here's a carryism. If you're going to counter, make it a verbal counter. Okay. Do we accept verbal offers? Hell no. But if you wanted to do a verbal counter, the seller would consider an offer of to multiple people. That's really not a counter, right? Because they don't have anything in writing. So when they're putting it in paper, it's going to be what? Another offer. Now, here's the question. Let's say you did that to 5 people and all 5 people send you an offer. Do you have to accept any of them? No,
Is the seller's discretion.
you don't. And here's a question. And this one causes a lot of heat. We're going to talk about, I'm just going to bring it up now, but we're going to talk about this other topic in a second. Highest and best. In a highest and best situation, you've called for highest and best. Does the seller have to accept a contract?
It's relative what's highest.
No.
No.
Does anybody think yes? Because I get a lot of agents screaming, you had to accept it because it was highest and best. The answer is no. Thank you for you guys being as wonderful advisors as you are, knowing that that is not the case. A seller never has to sell their property. Now, if what came through on the highest and best was an amazing contract that was above all the terms of the contract, could we sue for our commission? Yeah, we could. Are we ever going to do that? No. Okay. Can the buyer's agent sue for commission? No. The only way a buyer's agent can sue for commission is if they are already in contract and then the seller defaults. That's when the buyer's agents can sue for commission because they did their job. They brought that person to contract. They're in contract. It's the seller who defaulted, not their buyer. You follow me? Where the lawsuit can happen without the contract is the list side. Like we keep doing our job, we're bringing you things above what you wanted in the listing agreement. Well, who else knows what's in the contents of those listing agreements? Only us, right? But we're never going to do that. That's just not who we are. Okay, everybody good on that? So that goes back to that listing agreement part that everybody freaks out about, 8B, 8D, you know, how they can have to owe a commission without going into contract. That's what that's in regards to. Okay. Can the buyer sweeten an offer by including a box of candy, flowers for the seller along with the written offer? The buyer can.
Yeah.
But you as an agent, no way. You as an agent, don't touch any of this. Don't touch those little love letters. Don't touch any of that. If that buyer wants to somehow deliver this on their own, you are not party to that, okay? You've got to be super careful with all this. This is like a trap question. I'm going to tell you right here. This is like leading you down the bad place. Those love letters, by the way, are great, but they are a double-edged sword. Do you know what lives inside of those sneaky little love letters? Fair housing violation everywhere. Oh, I can't wait to see my kids running down the stairs on Christmas morning. Familiar status. I just did, religion. I mean, hello. I was just one
So
sentence.
they have to come to themselves to the-
Yeah, you don't want to, you don't want to touch that.
'Cause there was a while there when people were including.
Oh, people still do it all the time. But if you are party to passing that on, you are party to that fair housing violation.
Well, you can be part of the passing it on just by giving the address.
How do they know you gave it? I don't know.
Yeah.
People are very
Well,
resourceful.
it's on most of the real.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, see that?
Karen,
Yes,
Karen,
and the listing. Yes.
any recommendation of how to handle the agent on this buyer side when they're pressuring you to show that letter?
Who is pressuring you to show the letter? I'm sorry.
The buyer's agent.
And you're the buyer?
Sure, they,
Oh, you're the listing agent and they want you to
Yes.
show the letter?
yes.
You say, I'm sorry, that is a potential fair housing violation. You are welcome to do it yourself. I'm not going to be party to that. You tell
So
them
when
right.
you say you're welcome to do it yourself means that I'm telling him you have to go directly and give it to
Your
the
buyer.
seller.
Yeah, but you know what? That's a fair housing violation too for the buyers to go ahead but there's a time, and we all remember, maybe not, I don't know how long you guys have been in the industry, where buyers agents used to accompany us. Does anybody remember this? Presenting offers.
That was off.
It was a time. Because they felt that they could present the offer in a better way than the listing agent. It was a long time ago. That never will happen anytime again, but they would be allowed to speak to the other side in our presence. That was allowable in that type of situation. But you could recommend if your buyer wants to send them something, have them send it to the house from your buyer. I wouldn't recommend you getting involved. I mean, have you heard of fair housing? That's what I would say, Maria. Have you not gotten
Okay.
one, piece of correspondence from NAR telling you to stay away from love letters? I'm sorry, but, I pay attention to fair housing. That's what it is. But
Okay.
yeah, but if I would just be very careful about it. I mean, I get it. I get the whole thing. But if you're on the listing side, but I mean, I understand them. I understand what they are, but you have to just be very careful. If the buyer wants to send it, let the buyers can talk to the sellers, right? Sellers can talk to the buyers. None of them are realtors. None of them are part of the code of ethics, right? But we have to be very careful. We're held to a higher standard. Does that make sense?
Yes, thank
If the
you.
buyer is willing to waive the appraisal, does that mean the lender is willing to accept this term? Don't ever think just because they say, oh, I don't care if it appraises, that the lender is going to agree. Okay, now, of course, now we have the appraisal wrapped into the 30-day anyway, but a lot of times you'll get all sorts of creative writing. Buyer will continue even if the appraisals doesn't go. That doesn't mean if they have a financing, you have to talk to that lender. The lender might be like, absolutely not. Yeah, they don't have enough money. So remember the question I've always told you. What is the price that you will decline the loan if the home does not appraise? You need to know that number. Okay? Because we're going to talk about appraisal gaps. Okay. If the seller asks multiple buyers to submit the highest and best offer, but the deadline changes but then changes their mind about selling after the offers, we already talked about that. They don't have to accept anything. Okay. Which type of brokerage relationship does this pertain to? The licensee is obligated to present all offers. Yeah, this is the one that they don't have to,
So,
Mhm.
but what if they get one and they like it before the offer, before the highest and best date? They can't do that, right? Or can
they can cancel highest and best at any time. Highest and best is
So they
just,
could take highest and best on
canceled,
Sunday, but
and
we
then
see something
canceled.
on Friday and say, oh, never mind, we like this one. You can do that.
sellers can do whatever they want. Remember, sellers and is it going to give you, the realtor, a very bad reputation? Absolutely. I'm sorry for you. It's a horrible thing, but the sellers can do that. You as as their hopefully guiding light can talk them out of it, I hope. But the idea is like, listen, you can do this, but why don't we wait to see if we get better offers? I mean, like there's ways we can do that, but sometimes that offer is going to expire. That's how people do it, right? Before the highest and best. And sometimes you have to say, I'm sorry, highest and best is canceled. Put in all offers today. That's usually what happens. They would cancel highest and best and say, put in all offers today. That's what they would do. They would just change the date of highest and best.
And you would contact each.
Everybody, they would contact each realtor. Yep. Okay. Licensee is obligated to present all offers and counteroffers in a timely manner unless the party has previously directed license. Oh, that's everybody. That's stupid. Okay. If your sellers feel overwhelmed by a number of offers they're receiving, you as the agent can help by picking and choosing which offers the sellers see. Is this true, guys?
No.
Thank the Lord you guys know this. But I'm going to tell you, there are a ton of agents out there who think this is their job. Yes. And it is horrific. I've had to say to people, I'm sorry, are you the seller? Are you the seller? Because you're talking and acting as if you're the seller. I mean, because it sounds to me like you have a personal interest. I didn't see licensee personal interest in this because remember, you need to disclose if you are. Oh, no, I'm not. So I have not heard you take even a breath to disclose any of this information to the seller. So please share with me when the seller has heard any of this stuff because you're speaking in their stead.
Unless the
happens all the
seller
time.
said to you, if it's not at least this price. don't
Yeah,
buy
but
it.
it's in other instances. So just be very aware. If you find, has anybody noticed this out there where agents act as if they're the sellers? I mean, it's horrific. So I would suggest always being very carefully worded and saying, so please get back to me once you've got the information from the seller. And as we all know, per code of ethics, I'll be waiting to hear from your broker as to when it was submitted. They have to notify you. Unless the seller has said, if it's below a certain price, they have to notify you when it was all presented, unless the offer's dead, right? Those two things, but other than that, their broker has to notify you. That's code of ethics, okay? You should include the number and amounts of multiple offers received in the property in your report for the appraiser. Do you guys agree with that? I think it's great. Because if you're trying to get an appraisal and you want to make sure it appraises, why wouldn't you give them that offer, that information? That just, more demand on the property shows the value of a property. So that's a really good point. I would make sure you're doing that. What form can you send other agents that basically protects everybody involved and prevents an agent from being accused of steering as opposed to letting the client choose the best offer? There's a multiple offers form. Yep, and it's in our documents. So if you have multiple offers, I highly recommend that you upload this. So we're going through this again because yes, maybe you're on the buy side or maybe you're on the sell side. But we need to make sure if we're in this situation that we A, know that this exists, and B, you have all the right information. Because we definitely don't want to make it appear that we're doing anything, especially, this is where it gets slim shady, guys. When the offer that gets accepted was ours. And I'm going to tell you, I have seen more things going to the board now than ever because people have been desperate. And especially now we're going to get into multiple offers. People are going to be more desperate. Okay, so that means what? More cases going to the board. Yeah. And now I can tell you at Aura, we made procuring cause. Before you go to procuring cause, you cannot go direct to arbitration. You must go to mediation first. That has become a requirement. We had to do it because we had so many cases. Is that crazy? Which is great because arbitration is a big, long, it's Judge Judy. I mean, honestly, you're going to court, right? Mediation is an opportunity to come together, talk through it. You can kind of caucus amongst yourself and hopefully come to terms. And if it doesn't work, then you go to arbitration. But the point being, we had so many cases, we had to do this. So I'm just going to tell you that with all multiple offers, that tells us what, guys? We have a lack of inventory. We knew this. And so we have a multitude of buyers that are coming back into our market because as interest rates have opened up, I think there's a lot more people ready to purchase and wanting to get involved again and able to get involved again. So what does that mean? More, I dare I say interest. I don't want to say fights. It could be fight, but I'll say interest over the limited inventory we currently have. So if you have a property that is well priced and in a good location, don't be surprised you're going to get multiple offers. Did anybody like my little fun question and answer? Wasn't it fun? Okay, we're going to do some more stuff. All right, you're gonna maybe like, maybe not, but we're gonna look at this. Everybody see my love letters liabilities? Okay, I'm gonna send this to everybody too, so you have this. This is again about the code of ethics and our legal and ethical considerations when dealing with multiple offers. This is very important that we know all this. So standard of practice 1.6, realtors shall submit all offers and counter offers objectively and as quickly as possible. Right? Unless, of course, the seller has told us don't submit anything below 650 or something like that, right? We know that. Standard of practice 1.15, obligation in multiple offer situations. Realtors, in response to inquiries from buyers or cooperating brokers, shall, with the seller's approval, disclose the existence of offers on the property. Again, only if the seller has told us we can. And if authorized, shall disclose whether they are obtained with the other firm or however. Okay, then here you go. Act 1.7, when acting as listing brokers, we shall continue to submit all offers. Now, this is important, guys. 9 out of 10 times, we are always going to say to continue to accept backup offers, right? That is the best thing. But that means if you have a property and you still go pending, you still have to show the property. You still have to show all offers. Don't forget that. So even if I get these calls on the weekend, Carrie, you got to pen this right away. I don't really know why you want me to pen it right away, but I will pen it for you. But it doesn't mean you have to stop showing it, because even if people want to still show because they want to put a backup offer, you have to still show it. You may get less calls, right? Because less people want to be backup, but you still have to show that. Okay. And then here you go. Upon written request, which could be an email, guys, the cooperating broker who submits an offer to the listing broker shall provide, as soon as practical, written affirmation that the offer has been submitted. There it is. But you have to request it. It is not an automatic thing. You must request that they tell you that information, and then they have to do that. That is code of ethics right there. Realtor shall not.
Carrie,
Yes.
Carrie, going back to the pending question,
Mhm.
there is also a box that we can check off on the listing agreement, right? Where we don't have to submit any offers after an offer has been accepted.
Yes, you can choose. First, you have withhold all verbal offers. Please do that.
Mhm.
Then after that, when it says whether you want to accept backup offers or not. Personally, I always feel it's best for most properties to always accept backup offers. But let's say you have a unique seller who, we all have that one, but after we get them in contract, we don't want them to think about it ever again, because these are the people that are going to be backing out right, left, and center. That person, then you would not check that box, right? Because you would want to make sure you're not accepting backup offers. That information, whatever you've decided on that particular section, has got to make sure that you put it on the MLS data entry sheet so we know what to select and end the MLS when we enter it. Okay?
Oh, okay. Okay.
Because again, Jane, who's inputting this into MLS, she's not, and maybe Jill's backing her up or whoever's helping. We're not searching through your listing agreement to look for that. So we
Okay.
look on their data entry sheet to see what you selected. Okay?
Okay. Thanks.
Sure.
Carrie,
Yes.
when a buyer, if I'm representing the seller, asks you for a written confirmation that you sent the offer, is it enough? I know we have a form that I used in the past, but is it enough to just answer, yes, the offer has been submitted, or
No.
it has to be through
No.
signed by the seller?
No, it's not by the seller. It'd be by me. So Maria, if it was you're the listing agent, I would have to send it. It's by the broker. The seller, it doesn't ever says the seller. It would be the listing broker. So if
Okay,
you
so I
were the
have to get a
listing
note
agent-
from you, a signed
Yeah,
note
or
that.
I would, it's not, you have to get a hall pass. No, just teasing, yeah. No, so let's say somebody requested it from you. You asked me, I would respond to that person and say,
Yeah.
via email, I say, Maria, when did you say? And then I would let them know on my header, this is when it was submitted. So that way they know as a listing broker, as the brokerage, head the brokerage, I'm telling them this is when it was submitted.
So if I'm the buyer's agent, and then of course, many agents out there, sometimes they don't even know this.
Yep.
I have to let them know that it has to be their broker
Yeah.
that
Mhm.
responds.
Yep.
Okay.
Yeah,
Thank-
I mean, 'cause if you just say, yeah, I submitted it, like, how do we, I mean, we know, but like, if it's some agent who doesn't even respond to their phone or text, do we even know that that's why we're asking, right? Like, cause we don't believe that they submitted it. That's the whole problem, right?
Okay,
Mm-hmm.
thank you.
You're welcome. Mm-hmm. Okay. Okay. So here we go. This is important. Standard practice 1.8 denounced that realtors acting as agents of brokers or buyers shall submit all offers and counteroffers until the acceptance. And this is again the same thing, unless you say that you don't want to take backup offers. That's the same thing if you have a rental. By the way, if you have a rental, please don't accept backup offers. Just don't do that. We hate rentals anyway. Don't take backup offers. Okay. Obviously you have to always promote the interest of your customer, and always we make sure that we are confidentiality and we don't disclose anything that we shouldn't be disclosing. So that's why we are always asking our sellers what they are allowing us to disclose. Here's the love letter, okay? Liability. So there's a lot of pitfalls, especially fair housing. So we have to inform them that we will not deliver these because of that, right? We have to remind them that their decision to accept them or reject them is based on their objective criteria. And so we can't say that they can't read them or accept them, they can, but we're the ones we can't pass them on because of the fair housing liabilities. Does that make sense? And that's straight from the National Association of Realtors. Okay. Now I want to show you something else. Are we doing good so far? We learning some new things. We're going to jump right in to desktop share dot loop. Everybody see the dot loop screen? Okay. I lost the dot loop screen. Okay, dot loop. First, let's go to templates. Oh, first let's log back in. Okay. Now, if you remembered a couple things, we have under here, under buyer, you have a showing agreement that they've added and the exclusive broker buyer agreement, right? We have those things in here for you. Now, we also have in here for you, where did I put the buyers? Where did the multiple offer go? Oh, here, multiple offers. I have a whole multiple offer folder for you. So you have in your multiple offer form to seller, to buyer, and the guide. So let's look at the one to the buyers. So if you're working with a buyer, this explains the seller has requested each buyer. So this is something if you're working with a buyer, a seller, excuse me, who is doing multiple offers, I would upload this into your listing and have them fill this in, because this is what they're talking about to protect you. Okay, the seller has requested each buyer submit their highest and best by this time on this deadline. Okay, all offers must be in writing. All offers must be submitted by the listing agent via email or personal delivery. Seller has sole and absolute discretion to accept, counter, or reject any offer received. Seller is not required to accept any offer regardless of the terms, conditions, and has the right to, and discretion to reject all offers. This is so important that agents read this, because agents somehow believe that you have to accept something. After receiving all offers, seller has the right to further negotiate the terms and conditions of all offers. Seller has no obligation to negotiate or communicate with each and every buyer. So they didn't have to tell anybody. Of course, would we do that, guys? No, because in our relationship with these agents that we know we're going to continue to work with, we're obviously going to speak to them, right? But the seller does not have to. Seller can make the decision to accept an offer based on criteria they deem appropriate under the circumstances and in seller's sole judgment. The price is only one factor of many that is considered. If the seller accepts buyer's offer and such offer does not result in a closed sale of the property, the seller may, in sole's discretion, reopen negotiations with any buyer. The seller may also request the listing agent to solicit new offers. This is huge because so many listing agents, I'm going to tell you, so many other agents love to school, especially if they're like, I've been in this industry for 20 years. Doesn't mean they're doing it right. Most of those are doing it wrong. So I'm going to tell you, this is a really good one. If you are going to be somebody who's putting out multiple offers and going to be, this is really important that you put this out there. Let people understand what multiple offers are. Okay.
So the buyer's agent would submit that with the offer?
Correct.
And then seller would sign it, then you send
Yep.
it back when it's rejected. And
Yeah.
add it. Okay.
Mm-hmm. It's a great one. Now, here's one that you would give to your seller. And this explains how multiple offers work.
Carrie, why do we
Mhm.
do that? Because we-
I would do this right in the beginning at a listing presentation. I would bring it with you. And if you say this property may go into multiple offers, this is just a great thing for you to have to understand. If we're going to do multiple offers, this is how it works. We can counter, we can ask all buyers to submit highest and best. Now, this is important. Look at number 3. You can ask all buyers to submit their highest and best. With this option, you're going back to the buyers who submitted an offer and asking them to present their highest and best offer on the property. The buyers would be asked to supply this offer by a certain deadline. It is important to understand this could result in the buyer resubmitting their original offer or submitting a new one. You could then have the option to consider all highest and best offers and deciding to accept, reject, or counter them. Similar to option 2, any buyer could decide to withdraw from negotiations if the buyer did not want to compete with other buyers. So this explains the highest and best. So it tells them how it works with just multiple offers and how it works with highest and best. Now, so you understand, you cannot do both. You either do multiple offers, just allow them to roll in, or you do highest and best, obviously, right? But what you cannot do is you cannot accept an escalation clause with highest and best. Most agents do not understand that. Most agents have no clue about that. So if you are going to put in an escalation clause and there's a highest and best,
They should come back and tell you.
they should tell you you're not allowed to do that. Now, if it just says multiple offers and they're going to look at it at this date, that is not a highest and best. There's a very different thing with highest and best and multiple offers, right? This is multiple offer situation. The sellers are going to be looking at them on Sunday. That is not highest and best. You could put in an escalation clause. We are requesting highest and best by Sunday at this date. There's no escalation clause. Supposedly, it's just one offer. Your best offer, which is why escalation is not supposed to be allowed, because it's not one offer.
Yeah.
It's the eBay trying to beat you every 2 seconds, right? So that's the difference. And that's why the escalation clause is not supposed to be allowed at highest and best. Now, again, who am I to say? Am I going to tell you if it's a highest and best not to put an escalation clause in? Of course. Yeah, I'm not going to say not to do it. Listen, we're all going to say, I'm going to tell you no agent knows this. I'm going to tell you agents don't know the rules at all. Do we know the rules? Yes. But you're trying to get your customer's offer accepted. Now, there's pros and cons to an escalation clause. So here, this is a great, I'm just going to say, this one is just something that you give them. You can have them sign it or not sign it. Realistically, this is simply a disclosure for them to understand the difference between multiple offers, highest and best, and how it works. It doesn't do anything other than that, right? It's just explaining to the seller. So this is why I like this. So the seller can say, well, you didn't explain to me how that worked. Yes, I did. Here it is. So this is just a really good form, okay? But it's not something that is a requirement. We don't require it, but it's a great form. And then there's a multiple offer guide to buyers. So if you're working with a buyer, this is really good information about multiple offers. Listen, this is a crazy market. I just want you to have, by the way, this would be a great downloadable guide. You're trying to, do a little lead capture, really good one, just saying. Okay, but throwing that out there. Right, but the one that you need to understand, if you are probably, if you're putting it in, they should be requesting it, but if you're on the list side, it's the notice of multiple offers to buyer. That's what you want people submitting with the offer, because that's the one that protects the seller and protects you, the agent, to show that you are not hand selecting and doing anything slim shady. That's the one that we read. That's the one, this is the one that you want to come with every offer. That explains the rules of engagement, and it has them submit. I would upload it into MLS as a, yeah, to your listing. And say, so it should be submitted with all offers. Yep, should be submitted with all offers.
Please just note, please note that this should be submitted. Just one should-
If it's a multiple offer situation, please submit the multiple offer form with all offers. Yes. If it was a multiple offer. Okay. I want everybody to know that. Why is home inspection disclosure in my multiple offer forms? Who has been playing in my thing? Very annoying. Backup contract is okay. Contract addendum. Here, let's look at the escalation clause though. So here's one escalation clause. This contract is made this day between buyer and seller for this property. The buyer and seller, for this certain day of the agreement, wish to modify or supplement the property, right? So here they're saying, so basically, prior to the seller's acceptance of the buyer's offer to purchase, if seller receives another prospective purchaser a bona fide offer for the property with terms acceptable to the seller and a net purchase price. This is important you understand this, because if the offer of 500, but they're asking for closing of 5,000, the net purchase price is not 500, it's 495. So it's the net purchase price, not the purchase price on the front of the contract, okay? So that's important. The buyer agrees that the purchase price of the buyer's offer is going to be increased so that the net price will be blank higher, 1,000, 2,000, 5,000, depends on the purchase price, right? To a maximum purchase price of, let's say you offered at 500, maybe you're willing to go to 525, 550, whatever that case is, right? The seller provide a copy of the competing offer to the buyer no later than the time the seller returns a copy of the executed agreement to the buyer. They have to give you a copy of the contract you're beating with obviously the information redacted. The seller agrees to that they would come with this agreement with an escalation purchase price of, so let's say it comes to 520. Because the other, let's say you go up on increments of 2,000 and the other one was 518. So they show you a contract of 518, everything else is crossed out. And so this says 520 here, and this goes along with your contract that was written at 500, which came with an escalation clause written at $2,000 increments up to 525. Everybody clear on that? How that would work?
So wait, Carrie, I have a
Yes.
question. So on 1A, the
Yes.
second portion where it says purchase price of, let's say you go to 525,
Huh?
then number 2 is also the same.
No, number 2 is blank. When you're
Oh,
sending
blank.
this
That's right.
to
Okay.
to the seller, this is blank.
Oh,
This would come back to you as an executed copy if your offer wins, filled in at whatever price it ends up being executed at.
gotcha.
Your winning offer of. It's kind of like a game. The final terms, right? So like in this, let's say it came in at 520, and then it would come along with the executed copy, usually just the front page of the other contract that was at, say, 518 with the personal information deducted, so you could show that it was a net of 518. So you know that even though you were at 500, you would go to 525 of $2,000 increments, so that would bring this to 520. Does that make sense? So the seller has filled this in at 520, you had signed it, and now they've signed it. So even though your front page shows 500, now for the lender in the room, Miss Maria, would you probably prefer not just this addendum, but to redo the front page to then read 520? You don't care? Okay, that's good to know. Okay, that's great.
Everybody agrees.
Yeah, okay, good. Because the final sales price is right here. Okay, great. Any questions on an escalation clause? Again, an escalation clause is not supposed to be used with the highest and best. Is it being used with the highest and best? All the time. So it's up to you, knowing that information of whether you'd like to use it or not. Am I going to tell you not to use it if you're representing your buyer? No. It's your call. Totally your call. Because nobody knows that.
The highest and best helps to just get things simpler.
It's supposed to be, this is it. This is your last shot. Give me your best shot.
And we're done.
And this isn't your best shot because this is, I'm playing an eBay game where I'm just gonna keep ticking up and up and up, right?
Your best
That's
thought is for the box.
exactly. So you should have came in at 525,
Yeah.
but you're not because you're playing. Exactly. So that's why escalation clauses are good. But
'Cause they're trying to.
now we have had offers where they might have 5 different escalation clauses. So you then have escalation clauses beating each other out, which is just like eBay. Where you have all
You
these,
have to sit down with a spreadsheet.
Uh-huh.
to figure out who-
yeah.
Gary, when do you use a kick out clause?
I'm sorry?
When do you use the kick out clause? Because I seen it
Ah.
here, especially in the space codes. Like a seller is, the property is on the contract with a kick out clause
Uh-huh.
for 48 hours.
So let me show you what the kickout clause is. I love a kickout clause. Thank you for asking. Kickout clauses are so much fun. Okay, remember when you look up a contract, you see this one, you got kick out. Here's the far bar. Oftentimes you have far bar and you have crisp. So here's a kick out clause. You have a backup contract. It usually be, or you have a contract that's contingent. Oftentimes a kick out clause, you would add it to if you had a home to sell contingency. So let's say Linda submits me an offer on my listing, full price, but they have a home to sell contingency. I tell my sellers, don't take it. They're like, but it's full price. I'm like, that means nothing. They have a home to sell. They don't listen. So I say, guys, this is what we're gonna do. Let's accept it with a kick out clause. So in case we get another offer, you now are in the driver's seat where you can say to Linda's customers, now is your chance to put down another deposit and forfeit your home to sell contingency and financing contingency. So essentially they go hard on their money. Now, it's just like a builder. If you buy a home with a home to sell contingency, they'll only do it on a to be built, right? Usually. Now, before they go into permitting, they say to you, listen, you got to waive that, go hard on your money, or you're done. We're kicking you out. It's the same thing. So this is a kickout clause in the residential world. Seller will have the right to continue to show the property and solicit and enter into a backup bona fide purchase contract. Here's the bummer with this though, guys. We don't have active with contract. That is not a thing. So you really are showing pending accepting backup offers. So you have to have such an amazing property that you believe you're still going to get a ton of showings. Because let's be honest, how many people want to show a property under contract? Not that many, right? So that's the bummer with this. But then the third parties are subject to termination of the primary contract. Upon entering into a backup contract, you get a bona fide backup contract. The seller will give the buyer a copy of the backup contract, just like in an escalation clause. You have to block out the names, but you show the contract and you say, you don't show the purchase price. You don't show any of that information because it has nothing to do with the money. And you say, listen, I have a backup offer. This is your chance. The buyer now has to make an additional deposit, which you've decided, 5,000, 10,000, 3,000, whatever that is, if they want to continue. They have 3 days to decide this. And by doing that, they're also deciding if they choose to put the extra money down, they're also waiving all contingencies on financing and the sale of the buyer's property. They have to waive financing because even if you waive the buyer's property, most likely they wouldn't be approved for financing because they still have a home to sell. So if you just waive the home to sell contingency, it's not enough, right? So that's why you need to make them waive both. So if they choose to do that, then the additional deposit, now if they don't want to do that, then the additional deposit gets credited back to the buyer. and then they go into first position with the other contract. So that's the kickout clause. It kind of puts the seller in the driver's seat, but it does put them in a lesser position to continue to market their home, right? Because their home is pending, right? Does everybody follow on that one? Okay, everybody good on that? Okay, I have one more thing I want to show you, which is not really multiple offers, but definitely important, and I put it in here. Do I have any questions about multiple offers?
Yes, any recommendation, when you're dealing with the buyer, I'm the listing agent, and when you're dealing with the buyer and you ask for highest and best, and they say, because I had that before, you already probably have the highest and best, we gave you the best offer that it could be because they gave you an escalation class, very high, you know, that $15,000 that could go up to $50,000 more, for example. So I need recommendation on how to talk about that with the agent.
So wait, I'm trying to understand. You're on the list side, the buyer's already given you a really great offer with a very high escalation clause. So what's the problem?
So the seller is asking now for highest and best, and you call everybody to let them know, and the agent tells you, why are you asking for highest and best? We gave you an escalation clause that is amazing and it's super high, and that's the best they wanna do.
And you say, because the seller has determined they would like to call for highest and best. You don't have to explain any more than that.
Can't accept that.
Yeah, you can, well, it's again up to her to say that, but yeah, again, you're not allowed to accept the highest and the escalation clause and the highest and best. So you can say you need to put your highest offer in at this time. It is contradictory. So have your cake and eat it too clause. Yeah. Yeah, that's what I would go with. So they're asking for all hands on the table with their best cards. So I recommend putting in your highest offer because they're asking, we have several interested parties and they want to give everybody the opportunity.
So Carrie, really quick,
Yeah.
I know you're moving on, you want to move on to something else, but really quick in that regard with highest and best.
Uh-huh.
So technically they have to provide you with the other contract, right? Like to
Yes.
show that
Yes.
there's substantial evidence
Yes.
of the highest and best, but obviously the majority of time they don't do that, but it's something that we can request, right? Can you provide us with the competing offer that was the closest to ours and why we're,
Oh, wait, if it's at highest and best, no, escalation, they can, in
Oh.
order for them to actually execute the contract on an escalation clause, they have to give you the contract.
Oh, right. Oh,
And
highest and
highest
best.
and
that you
best, they
don't.
don't have to. They don't have to show you.
Oh, yeah. Got it.
They have to
Okay.
accept an offer.
Yeah.
But
Okay.
thank you. Mhm. Okay, so I added this weekend. If you have a buyer, God help you, who has a situation where they're buying a home that has solar panels, either rented or leased, here is an addenda that you need to have. It's under attorney addenda. And as I get addendas written by attorneys, I'm adding them in here now. Okay, so this one I think is important that we all have, and unfortunately it's becoming more and more of a thing. Now, remember, if it's a PACE, and guys, if you are representing a buyer that's trying to buy a home with solar panels and the home has a solar panels through a PACE loan, good luck. Good luck. Because if they need financing, probably they won't get it. Just know that, because the PACE loan is attached through taxes and most likely it's in first position because it's taxes. And therefore the lender will not want to take that on because they will be in second position. Okay, now this is an addenda that you would submit because this makes the contract contingent upon the solar panels. So it says the following terms and conditions are included in the contract between buyer and seller. So it says that they have a solar system included in the property, basically, okay? And it talks about what's on the solar panels and blah, blah, blah. Then it talks about the financial status. So you need to get this filled in by the listing agent. Are they owned free and clear? Or are they subject to an existing lease? Owned free and clear, or and they're going to be included in the bill of sale, or are they subject to a lease or some kind of financing? And then you have to put down all the information. Who's the leasee or lien holder? What is the account number, current monthly fee? If it's finance, what's the balance? All of that. If it's a lease, when does it expire? Okay, then it says if fees or costs are signed or assumed by the buyer, then you have to select the solar panels are subject to an existing lease, PPA system, or financing. They agree, the buyer and seller agree, you pick one or two. The seller shall pay off the thing, which is great. We love that one. If that's the case, we're great. How often will that happen though? Often not. So then you would pick B, number 2. The buyer shall assume the lease or the financing. The seller shall in good faith assist the buyer in obtaining the approval, okay? Or the loan or the lien holder to assume the applicable. And then it says D, if there's an agreement with a third party for the sale of excess energy produced by the solar system in the state. And then you would say who that third party is, okay? Then it talks more about, this is very important. Within 3 days after the effective date of the contract, the seller has to deliver the buyer a copy of the existing lease, the PPA, or the system financing documents. So they have to give you everything, okay? And then the buyer has due diligence. So the buyer has to figure all this stuff out. The age, the end of lease terms, all of these things the buyer has to figure out, okay? The buyer has within 7 days of the effective date, I have another one that says 10 days. If we need to add that, I can, to apply for the lease, okay, or the loan or whatever they're applying for. And then this is what's really, the buyer's obligation for this sale is contingent upon the buyer obtaining the lease or lien holder's approval. This is really important. No later than 3 days prior to the closing. An unfulfilled lease or loan assumption, this contract shall be canceled and the buyer will be entitled to a return of their deposit. So this is important, okay? So if they cannot get that and they're unable to get the loan or the lease or whatever, as long as they've notified them in writing with 3 days prior, they get their money back. 3 days, well, a lot of times it takes that long. Yeah, it is terrible.
45 days to get approved for.
Well, it depends on what it is. And what you gotta understand is some leases and some loans, I've seen some, they're horrible. These things are so bad. But like, let's say someone bought them for $40,000 and let's say they paid off 10 grand on it, right? Then now they're 30 grand. Well, sometimes they make the new borrower go back to 40. Oh yeah. Oh, I've seen some nasty things. So you think you're paying 500 for the house, you're really paying 540. How many people are going to be willing to do that? So once they see all this, this makes it subject to. That's why this is important. You don't want to go start writing your own little addendas. This is really important.
What
It-
about, Carrie, what about, you keep saying PACE?
Yeah.
Is PACE a company?
No.
Or is it the type
PACE?
of loan?
It stands for something, it's an acronym. Basically, it's a government program that they're giving money to homeowners for home improvement. So it could be used to fix your windows to make them more energy efficient. It could be used for a variety of things, but what they've started doing, and it's really been more in South Florida, but I think it's starting to work its way up here, which scares the hell out of me. But now it's starting to be used for, sadly, solar panels. The problem is that these solar people sell them on this concept of, oh yeah, it's going to increase the value of your home. Guys, no, it's not. I've not seen one appraisal. Have you seen one appraisal, Maria, where it's actually increased the value? It does not increase the value of your home. What it does do is it creates a huge problem for the buyer to, if it is a loan or some kind of lease, for them to get approved. That's the problem. And now they have another debt service that they have to take on. So that's a big issue. Oh yeah, it waives. So if you had, it's God help you, if you had a new roof, you now no longer have a warranty on that roof. It waives the warranty on your roof. I mean, there's so many issues that come about from these solar panels. These solar panels are a mess. So I could go on. Trust me, I have.
And how, if you're the buyer's agent, how like. to what extent do we need to tell them about solar panels? I mean, they have to do the research themselves, right?
We can give them information that we have that's objective for sure. Because, let's see what kind of information can we
Like
we
I got
need.
one now where
Mhm.
it's a 25-year lease. They're
Ugh.
still 23 years left. Luckily, it's a brand new house,
Mhm.
a couple years old. So I've told them when your roof is ready to be replaced, you're gonna have to pay to get those panels taken down and then pay to get the panels taken back up, put back up.
Yeah, well, that's true.
Because that's an additional charge. They've seen the lease agreement.
And they like it.
They're okay with it.
I mean, again, all you can do is explain to them those types of things. If they're okay with it, it's not your duty to make them realize that it's a good, but you have to also let them know that, again, it's probably not going to increase the value of the home.
Yeah, they're not.
So if they don't care about that, if they're okay with paying for it, I mean, then it could be okay. Some people like the idea of it. And that's okay. But the reality is, it causes a lot of sales to die. It really does.
And some of these loans are not transferable, right?
Oh, they're horrible. Yeah, so bad. And the worst thing is when you go to a seller's house and they've been bamboozled by these solar people.
Those people are bad.
They are awful. And here these poor people think they're going to have an increased value in their home. They tell them what, 40% or some ridiculous number. And now they're in a lease or some kind of lien that they can't get out of. They don't want to pay it off before closing. And this is where I think it's hard enough to find a buyer who'll do it, but it's really hard when you go to the listing, trying to explain that to the seller who's been sold a good, I know, he's been sold some snake oil here and you're like, yeah, that's not going to cure anything. That's going to actually give you worse. I don't know what to tell you. That's the difficult
The
part.
fact that they void the warranty, I mean.
Yeah.
That's a liability for the solar panel companies because they are not. Isn't
The
that?
solar panel companies don't care. They're here today, gone tomorrow.
But I mean, if you just.
Yeah, I mean,
mean,
I
this
can
is
tell
what
you
they
that the
think.
sellers have no idea that their roof warranty has been voided.
It's a bad thing for bringing us.
Yeah.
Really, does the roof warranty ever kick in for anything?
Probably not.
'Cause I mean,
Let's be
honestly,
real. Yeah, probably not.
I mean, I
So,
don't think that's. But I've also heard of people that had roof leaks after the solar
Well,
panels were installed.
that's more of a problem because the way it's installed and the little,
Right.
and even if they do, but how it goes in, like, depending on the wind and, because we have a lot of rain here and wind, I mean, it does compromise the roof. That's what happens. So your roof's not compromised. So, does the good outweigh the bad? I'm gonna say probably not.
Our decision, it's their decision.
Yeah.
That's the problem. Yeah, that's the problem.
But then that's what it's saying.
Yeah. Well, guys, thank you all for joining me today. I hope you've got some good things on multiple offers, dealing with buyers, trying to make your offer better. So it's been good seeing y'all. Hope to see some of you guys tomorrow in Lake Nona for our social media.
Thank you.
Bye.